Hello, everybody, and welcome back to us, I suppose. But yeah, look, Happy New Year, as we say, in the middle of February nearly. And it's great to be back with WTS 325. Mero, it's been a minute. How have you been?
Good. We missed January. What happened there?
You just took a bit of time off, man. You know what I mean? Like we're veterans at this stage. We don't have to do those heavy dates and heavy diaries that the younger whippersnappers do. We get to pick and choose. We're on the Roman Reigns schedule.
Exactly. We're the grizzled young vets.
Exactly. So yeah, we just we done our now traditional annual Christmas special with the lads from This Is Content, and
Which went down brilliantly.
absolutely, yeah, we got
Everyone loved it.
yeah, and it was great to do that in person with the two lads. And then we just, yeah, you had a lot going on in life. I have a lot going on in life. So yeah, we said, you know what, we'll ease ourselves in. January's a miserable month anyway. Let's get through that, and then we'll pick it back up again. So here we are, picking it back
Here
up
we are.
again.
We are back.
Yeah, man.
For how long? We don't know, but we are back.
We've been doing for the last little while, you'll get 4 or 5 episodes, we'll take a little break. You'll get 4 or 5 episodes, we'll take a little break. It's the Roman Reigns schedule.
We'll do what we want. Anyways, how are things? How are you? Did you have a good Christmas? In, in February.
Yeah, I did, Mero. Yeah. I had a great.
I haven't spoke to you since like the 18th of December.
No, and it's been for the betterment of both of us. Do you know what I mean? Jesus, like we're worse than an old couple now, you and I. So we needed that Ross and Rachel. We were on a break style distance. Yeah. Oh God, what do you want to do? Any kind of preamble? Do you want to, or we just get to the money shot? Like get to the guest.
We'll get to the guests.
Yeah, let's ease ourselves back in. Let's not try these forced, contrived conversations, huh?
Exactly. And I suppose a lot of the conversation that we had with our guests is probably, an intro that we might have talked about anyway in terms of current affairs at the moment and world politics. So we hooked up with the Free State's Dion Fanning. Thanks so much for joining us, Dion. How are you today?
I'm great, Mero. How are you?
Good. We're trying to get you on for ages, and I never had the balls to ask you.
Right.
So now I had the balls to ask you because I had your number.
Yeah.
2.5 years now doing the Free State podcast. What a success that's been.
I think it feels like two. I think it's not even 2 years.
No, isn't it August 23, 20?
But it's January 2025
22?
now. So it was April 23. April 23. It feels like, it's bad
Feels 10 years.
It's bad if you think it's longer. It certainly feels like longer for me. But yeah, no, it's been great. It's been great. And
Any live shows are coming up?
yeah, when we can when we can pin each other down. That sounds like a different type of podcast. But yeah, well, at the moment we're trying to do one up in Derry shortly. We're going to do one up in the Kevin Lynch's club in Dungiven. Joe has guaranteed my safety if I go up there. And we're going to do, and then we are loosely planning to do some live shows. We would like to do that. It'd be good to do that. But that would be the first one we're going to do, and just see how it goes. And if I get out of that one alive, then we'll try and do some more.
Well, if Joe was to safe passage, I think he'd be all right anyway.
Well, we'll see now. Like, this is the thing with Joe, like every story is like, yeah, you meet the actual people who are the subjects of the story, and they're like, that's not really how it happened. So even Joe's guarantee like of my safety, I'd be like, well, can somebody else come along and vouch for that as well?
How did yourself and Joe end up together doing Free State? Had you known him for a long time before you kicked off?
No, not really. I interviewed him in Derry when I had the podcast Unfiltered, which I did with Joe,
Okay.
Joe.ie, and we did a live show up there. That was the first time I'd met him, and I didn't really. I didn't stay in touch with him really. I bumped into him a couple of times, but we weren't really. It was just a couple of text messages. We said, let's try this podcast. And then we got in and did a couple of pilots and whatever. And it kind of seemed to go okay from the beginning. And yeah, we just kind of went with it. So it was a leap in the dark, but no, it's been like it has seemed to have, it seems to have kind of worked, and people are enjoying it so far. So no, it's been great.
I was just saying there, like when you're listening and you're kind of Joe goes on a ramble, I do be thinking, what is Dion thinking now?
Well, yeah,
He loves he loves a ramble, and a
he
great
do,
ramble.
he does. Yeah, no, it's funny. We had the academic Aaron Edwards in this week, and at one point Joe asked a question that was so long that he actually interrupted himself. You know, he had to. Like, which rather than it's just it's a it's an unusual style of interviewing he has, but it does kind of it does work on occasion. But yeah, no, you sometimes you just gotta ride with it and go with it, and sometimes it goes somewhere that you kind of go, okay, I can see where you're going. Other times it goes nowhere. But then there's stuff that Joe goes, those he goes on those wandering kind of stories, and he ends up talking about sheep nuts as an aphrodisiac, and and I think that's been, sheep nut sales sort of doubled after Joe talked about them as an alternative to Viagra, and and the place in Mayo that sold them was inundated. So there is some method in his madness.
I particularly loved I love his rants, and I love his, when he's kind of I suppose what I'm him and Han here about is that the ones where he went on tirades against Conor McGregor, and
Yeah.
he just, like, there was an element of bravery there and just not giving a shit um about it. Have you guys ever received any type of backlash when Joe picks on people to like that?
I don't know. Yeah, it depends what you mean by backlash, Mara. Like, there's stuff, uh, I guess there is stuff said and there's stuff done, but there hasn't been anything beyond that. And, I think like it is that thing even today, even in the world we live in today, which seems kind of fractured and a
Mm.
lot angrier, that you can lose sight of what reality is still. You know what I mean? Like that most people are out there with a kind of pretty good grasp of what's going on, and uh, you know, um, like the difference between like kind of insanity and or just those people are kind of still rooted in common sense. Even like, and it's hard. It's harder to kind of hold on to that idea when you see things, and we see so much now as well, because like any incident, you see something, and like 30 years ago something could have happened and you wouldn't have video clips of it, or you wouldn't see somebody getting their head, whatever it is, like somebody getting beaten up or whatever, that, and all those things that create a sense of uh a little bit being under siege. And I'm not being a Pollyanna. I'm not being like, oh, everything is great these days, because clearly you look around the world and it isn't. But at the same time, um, you know, it's not like most people aren't, I don't think are as, those of us who are in the media, it can be sort of switched on to a kind of certain frame of thinking. And, and to be honest, like that's been as true. Now, obviously Twitter and things have got a lot worse and are just a lot more kind of unhinged, I'd say, rather than anything. But, I was getting abuse on Twitter 15 years ago for writing about Brendan Rodgers and Liverpool. So, it doesn't change in that regard. And actually, because it's so crazy there now, it's so unhinged. It feels like you're not actually dealing it like it's really like you're not that it's not reality. You know what I mean? That it's not the real world. and there was always an element of that. Uh, um, but and I got, and we can all get sucked down those kind of little rabbit holes, and like um, being the kind of the cartoon guy. Sorry, like, I'll come to bed in a minute, love. But there's just someone being wrong on the internet. You know what I mean? Like that. Uh, like, and I've just got to fix. I've got to fix it. And I don't think that even happens anymore because people are just like, it's all crazy out there. And in some ways.
Yeah.
Like I can remember actually, and I very rarely engaged. I didn't get into too many things like that on Twitter, but I can remember once doing it, and I was in a hotel with my wife, and literally it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I've just got to just send one more tweet, and this fella will realize that I'm right and he's wrong, and then one more, and you just go on and on and on. And that doesn't happen anymore because everyone knows that it's kind of crazy. Like, it's just an unhinged world. So, like, yeah, there's probably stuff out there, but it's been fine. And I think when, people like Conor McGregor and stuff like that, there's also a lot more people who understand, who are uh, disappointed and more in that trajectory.
Yeah. It's an interesting one as well, though, when you're talking about that and you're talking about like Twitter has become just a cesspit, even more so than it ever was. But like the polarization that we see now and the whole thing of like when people, what's the Steve Bannon line? You flood the zone.
Flood the zone, yeah, yeah.
People just throw as much shit as they possibly can to try and you can't pull the common sense thread out of any of it because you're like, that has nothing to do with, hang on, but there's just so much shit being flung that you can't actually get sense and decency out of it. Like, you working in the media, and as you said, like, you're getting stick for writing stuff about Brendan Rodgers in Liverpool all those years ago. Like, is it something that happened kind of slowly, or did it just come off a cliff edge where you went, oh, hang on, the game has changed completely here?
Um, well, football was the kind of pioneer for all of this. You know what I mean? Like, you were getting like, it's like everything. There was like what really what mattered in football, kind of the rest of the world. It was like, it's like culture leads the way in terms of things rather than politics. And like, even going, the like there was like from the advent of Twitter, football Twitter was a kind of just setting out its stall, if you like, in terms of tribalism. And if you said something, and like even before, like, I remember like the first, was that before or after? It was before that, like the Luis Suarez Patrice Evra uh, thing at between Liverpool and United, and that was one of the first examples
Yeah.
of. And in a way, this is what I mean. Like, in a way, um, that seemed kind of more real because there was real people. You felt there were real people having a go at you, and there were real people having a go at you, and there were real people kind of getting. And okay, it was football rather than people being racist or people being whatever, but it was still, people calling you a cunt is still someone calling you a cunt, like, and. You weren't to know, like, I wasn't to go, look, this is fine. Wait till 15 years' time, it'll be a lot worse than this. The abuse, if they'll really mean it then. But so it was always like, so I guess in that way, you kind of saw what happened then. But it's not, I suppose the thing is, again, to go beyond the Twitter, it's what's happening in the world. And to
Yeah.
contradict what I'm saying, like, we are when I say most people are Sam, we do live in a country still that isn't as polarized, that isn't that there is still a sense of people talking to each other, and now I think all countries probably have that more than we realize from the outside. You look at any country from the outside, and like so many of them can seem like a basket case, and like I lived in England for a long time. I still, my wife's family are in England. I go over there. When you're in England, you're not going, oh, this country's a basket case. You're just seeing people going about their business most of the time, the same way, living their lives, going, just trying to get on with things, make a living, look out for their kids, all that kind of stuff that everyone does all around the world. And so it's not like, it's not that we are some kind of amazingly special place and everywhere else is batshit mental because we're judging. It's that, it's a line, you're judging people, people's, your interiors by other people's exterior, and it's a bit like that, that we
Hmm.
don't know. Like we see America, we see, and look, there's no doubt when you see Trump, you're like, this is now gone to another level. Um, but again, when you talk about Steve Bannon and flooding the zone, it's like, well, there's an argument, and I think I might have read there was a piece by Ezra Klein in New York Times about this where he talked about that, where he's flooding the zone because he's actually not doing he's not he doesn't have the power that he thinks he has. Now, when I read that, I'm going, great, I'm consoled by that, but you know maybe we shouldn't, like, anything that is a consolation sometimes actually is dangerous because it means you're not really alert to. It's kind of what you want to believe. Like, I want to believe that he isn't as powerful as he's making out, that he can't do the things that he says he's going to do. But at the same time, when you're president of America, saying them is very close to actually doing them.
Well,
But it's like I'm reminded of when you were saying there when you go to England and people are just getting on with their lives, and that is the real world. The real world isn't a chamber on Twitter. You know what I mean? And when you listen to yourself and Joe, and Joe is kind of like he is like he always brings up advocacy for marginalized groups. So
Mm,
when you think of when you think of marginalized groups being attacked, whether it be refugees or the trans community, as Joe advocates for quite a lot. And we saw there 2 weeks ago or a week ago, whenever it may be, when Trump had his speech and he went on, he was at pains to say about gender and
mm,
this is an executive order about gender. And people were like, people who don't usually have an opinion on politics were coming out and saying, oh, like he might be a bad man, but he's right about this. And none of that really matters. Or none of that. Like, for example, trans people have existed forever. They're going to exist forever. But people were latching on to Trump's words there. And then we have Trump yesterday or today, whenever it was out during the night, saying about wanting to turn Gaza into a resort and wants to take Greenland and wants to call, the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, all these things. And you're kind of going, well, he was voted in potentially, if surveys are to go by, because half of America want that extra bit of food on the table when none of that's going to happen, and none of the culture wars that he's picking actually matter when he's actually saying a lot more damage.
yeah. No, I think it's I think it's kind of interesting in terms of the culture war because it does seem right now that they've kind of uh, that they've, like, it's funny. I'm reading a book at the moment called Caledonian Road by Andrew O'Hagan, which is very good. But one of the kind of things that pivots on is the main character is a writer who writes this book and gets somebody else to front up as the kind of writer of it. And it's a kind of why men cry in cars, I think is the name of the title of this fictional book. But anyway, the guy who he set up as the kind of writer of it to do all the publicity ends up going kind of like, sort of hardline kind of what we call, like, I suppose, um anti-woke, if you like, you know what I mean? And ends up and this guy is an actor and he ends up being cancelled and he's fired from movies and all this kind of stuff. And your man is like, why did I pick this fella? But I'm reading the book and I'm going, that seems completely out of date because now if a character like that appeared, doing that, there'd be so many people saying, finally, somebody finally, it's common sense and speaking. And there are certain elements of things, and this is not like, and I wrote about this and we talked about this with McGregor. Like there is, when it comes to young men and stuff like that, there is, and I talked to Paul Perth about this, who's amazing. There is a need to do something. You know what I mean? And it's not just to combat the people who are are for whatever reason seeming like the kind of the role models. It's also to combat, it's not to combat, it's also just to give people a sense and man, a kind of a sense of purpose and a sense, and in all sorts of ways, that's an important thing. You know what I mean? Um, and so I don't know. It's funny. Like I just feel when I look at the culture wars now, I think, well, at the moment it seems like, and I can see why. And again, they feel like Trump had such a triumph by his standards, by his, like he won the popular vote, not by a huge amount, not compared like one of the smallest popular vote victories since over the last 20 years, I think since Bush and Gore. But he won the popular vote, which he never kind of thought he was going to do, only in his fantasies. So that has been turned into actually there is a craving for something else. And again, against that, there is that sense of you look at like the Democrats, you look at Kamala Harris, you look at all the stuff which was so obvious during. Stop fucking bringing it out. Stop getting Bruce Springsteen and Taylor Swift out to endorse you. Like nobody gives a shit about that stuff.
Very patronizing.
Yeah, and it's just like it does. Like yeah, it's so patronizing. Whoa, Taylor Swift. Okay, that's made my mind up.
But
And
again,
and like you say, and you're right, like the fiction that Trump is going to make their lives better is a fiction, but Taylor Swift isn't going to make their lives better.
but people tapped into that, and like when Taylor Swift came out, people thought that's it, the election. And don't get me wrong, like look, it's Taylor Swift's world, and we're just living in it and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But I think there was a naivety from Democratic supporters that when they got such an endorsement, they thought that's it. Her power and influence is so great that all the Gen Zers or whatever they are going to now vote for Harris based purely on this mega pop star. But like, I still can't fathom how they weren't seeing the obvious things, which was the route that Trump and his team are taking, going on what were very specific and targeted podcasts in terms of like that Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn,
Hmm.
that route he took, where he was doing these long form interviews and long form chats, and it wasn't like it seems obvious now and it's easy to say it, but it just that obviously was going to tap into more people and was going to win more people over to his side than Taylor Swift putting out a tweet or Taylor Swift putting up an Instagram post. It just it was insane to me that that
And he
was
didn't even say anything crucial or anything
no,
life
no,
changing
no,
on
no.
those podcasts. I listened to maybe 20 minutes of each, and they were completely boring.
It's the
But
usual
you're right. It
rambling.
was the podcast bro election, I think.
Yeah, well, it was. Well, I think there's a difference between getting Taylor Swift to endorse you and sitting and going, and Joe Rogan or yeah, like because there's a different type of following to that. And again, look, I remember when the Taylor Swift thing came out, you're seeing people talking, this is a huge, as you say, like this is hugely significant. And it's not to, diminish like that sense, but it's that sense um, of the power and the influence and the cultural importance of Taylor Swift. But, you know, it's one of many things. And it wasn't like Trump has that anti-establishment appeal that Kamala Harris like was a weak candidate, and like and he's been lucky. He's been lucky in the candidates he's faced really as well. Like that's and but that's a kind of perennial problem. And even now, if you look at what's happening in America, you're like, who are the people? And this is also feeding into that sense that they are the kind of victors. Like who's the opposite? Like who is
Yeah,
standing up and saying you can't say this, you can't do that. Um, Whether it's what he says about Canada or Gaza or any of these things. Like there's nobody there. They're obliterated at the moment,
yeah,
and so it's Trump and whatever kind of reaction you see to it from you know like talking heads and stuff like that. But there isn't anybody that you can kind of think, right, here's an alternative leadership, and so I think that's the thing that it never, Yeah, I think Rogan was probably there was probably a connection between Rogan and the other podcast he did and politics. There was more authentic, if you like, than the
Mm.
connection between, you know, like, and there's not like whoever was coming out to endorse,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's an endorsement. Like, it's not the same thing.
No,
This is him, and Trump is actually saying who he is on these things, and it's a kind of it's almost a it's he's going to where his voter base is, and he's just mobilizing them. Whereas an endorsement is a flimsy thing. Like, it's not a real thing.
It's not, and I think that sorry, you've made a point in a much better way than I did, in that the Democrats, I think, over relied on those endorsements as opposed to trying to meet the voters where they were. Like, I remember he was on, he done a podcast with a former WWE wrestler called The Undertaker, where the big issue that came out of it was about women in trans sports.
Hmm.
And like, I listened to that clip and I just thought to myself, this has nothing to do with anything, but
Yeah, yeah.
like it's being shared a couple of million times already within 24 hours of the podcast being put out. This is insane. Like, this is clearly something that is capturing hearts and minds, so to speak. But yeah, it's
we
a different
we we
ballgame.
have our own presidential election coming the end of the year. How do we see that panning out? Like, because there's a lot of arseholes that think our office of the president has a lot of executive duties and executive roles but how
Well,
do we think it's going to go in terms of culture war and like will the candidates be on prime time and be asked about culture wars and
yeah, but
I'm actually
look,
dreading it a bit.
are you like yeah, I
I might be
think.
nutty now because I think having said that, I was dreading the general election to the same context,
Yeah,
and
and
I don't think it really took off, so to speak.
it
Uh,
didn't. Now, I think in one way, there's one way the presidential election could take off, that in the way that the general election didn't, because it doesn't really matter, So, like, that's when you can throw in every bit of kind of culture war nonsense, depending on who the candidates are. Now, it's a very high bar to actually become a candidate, so um, I can't see the kind of more extreme possibilities, but you never know. Like, you never know who's going to kind of morph into something and tap into what they feel may be a kind of vote winning, uh, opportunity. But yeah, I thought the general election, like, there was a lot of concern. People were talking about being concerned about canvassing and all those things, and it actually seemed to go. It seemed to be, for whatever reason, it seemed to be more muted than people had.
I think it was more muted because Jerry the Monk Hutch took over the publicity,
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, maybe. Well, yeah, that was one constituency. I don't know. I think there was more, like, that did take over, I suppose, to a degree. That took a, but it wasn't. If the other stuff was happening, it would have got attention too. And I think maybe, um, I do feel as well that when people start thinking about the things now, the things that kind of engage them, and like they're talking about housing and they're talking about various things, they try to engage. And again, we still have uh, a country where people kind of engage to a degree with, with and I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but they engage with kind of issues, and they engage with stuff like that, and they engage with candidates, I guess, as well. And, like, you know, Irish politics is kind of um, it's so local. It's so focused on people work, and and I find, as I find myself going down that road as I get older. Like, not even just like, here's my constituency politician, but what part of my constituency is the politician from? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like, well, it's all right from someone from the, but what about someone from around here? And it's and again, it's totally. And I've told this. I told the story on the podcast, but, like, I mentioned before, and I'm involved in Dalkey United Football Club, and we said to a few, we said to our parents beforehand, you sent out a message saying, look, if anyone is interested or wants to, if anything you think Dalkey, if you're wondering if Dalkey, what Dalkey would like from, or any football club would like from, uh, you know, what it needs in terms of the election is, like every football club, we need more pitches, returning players away, all that kind of stuff. And I know one of our coaches then brought it up with a canvasser who called at the door, and I won't say who it was, but the canvasser said, "No, that's not an issue for a TD. That would be something you'd want to bring up with a local councillor." And completely right, completely the right, probably think, in terms of how politics is meant to work. But I actually told it, I interviewed Owen Murphy before Christmas for the podcast, and I told him, and he wasn't the most natural constituency politician, but I told him, and he had his head in his hands going, how could you say that? Like, how could you say it? Because in Ireland, you come away and you say, I'll look into that. I'll do, I'll sort out I'll help you sort out your pitches. And like, there is that thing when an election gets going that people think about things. Maybe they're a bit more immune to some of the culture war stuff because it's not the stuff that really concerns them.
I do think some
Because
of
it
that
doesn't
culture war
matter.
stuff burnt itself out in the local and Europeans as well, though. Because you had a huge amount of
Definitely.
candidates who, you know, didn't get anywhere near what they were proclaiming they'd get. You had a lot of issues kind of just fizzle out. Um, you did have one or two wildcards who did get through and got in based on that sort of, let's say, right-leaning ideology type
Mm,
thing. But I think the fact that the general election came just a couple of months after, they hadn't got time to pick up the pieces to re-establish or refinance a
Yeah.
campaign that, so you didn't have those issues as prevalent because I think it had already played itself out and it wasn't going to get a second bite of the cherry.
But
yeah,
it's completely crazy as well that like someone living at home could be living with their parents in their 30s are waiting on waiting lists at the hospital
Mm.
and waiting on a housing list to get a house, can't have don't have no prospect of a mortgage, and someone, the TD, knocks the door and they say, yeah, what's your stance in the LGBT community?
mm,
Like, doesn't matter, man. You're
I
you're
know.
on a list for the hospital waiting list for cancer surgery. You're on a housing list for a mortgage, and none of this matters. Like,
Mm, I
so
know. I
maybe they
know.
were maybe they were worn out and tired out or exhausted from the local and Europeans. Maybe they were, but
But also, I think
uh,
again, the Europeans, especially, like, but also the locals agree, like they give people free hits because they're not really sure who their politicians are, where they're going, what they're going to be doing. Whereas with a general election, you still have some sense of, you know who these people are and what they're going to be doing. And so I think there's a clarity about it which worked in its favor this time. And again, I take your point. That could mean it comes back for the presidential election, which could
Mm.
just be about anything.
do we have any candidates that are going to come forward?
Oh God, I don't know. I haven't looked at. I try to avoid that kind of.
Bertie
Um,
Ahern, Roshi and
Bertie,
Shortall,
Come on, Bertie. Yeah.
Bertie.
Bertie's Renaissance.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Who are the other?
Dion, I wanted to ask you about the FAI.
Oh, great.
What what state are the FAI in? Um, like I'm seeing a lot of like it's the new FAI, and I do believe, as a League of Ireland fan, there's definitely a concerted effort to improve that section from the kind of the guys behind the scenes, so to speak, not upper management. But when you're reading stories about how Colin Healy was treated, you're kind of going, are we just, is it still the same FAI?
It's not the same FAI. Like it isn't. Like it might be the same FAI as the FAI before the old FAI, if you know what I mean. Um, but it isn't the FAI of John Delaney. And yet there are constant kind of, there are regular missteps and, various things that you kind of think, God, that could have been done better. But at the Colin Healy one being a kind of really prime example of like treating somebody by, like but looking at all the facts of treating somebody who deserves to be treated better quite badly. And also just a failure to kind of, to understand it as a kind of a story as well, like, which is, not the primary concern, but it's still something that should be of concern to you. Like, how will this appear? Somebody who's very well respected, who has gone, just deserves to be treated with a bit of, and there's ways you can manage the situation. Like, it's all very well to say, with like the new manager picks their own team and all this kind of stuff. There's just ways around that you could actually negotiate it if you were cleverer. But yeah, I don't know. I feel. Do I feel any more optimistic about Irish football? Like, I suppose you'd have to feel a little bit more. I think the League of Ireland is it's exciting, but I think people and like I think people need to realize how far there still is to go in every sense, in terms like all the things that we talk about that, if you take the League of Ireland, you talk about attendances are now at a level where it's like, okay, this is, I wouldn't know, it's better than the bare minimum, but like you're dealing with something that is moving from a subculture. Like, I looked it up a few years ago before the like latest kind of boom, and I was just looking at some numbers. I just had an idea of something. Basically, there was as many people who went to mass daily in Ireland that went to League of Ireland matches. You know what I mean? Like, and you think how many people who go to mass daily? Like, it's not a lot. Not talking about going on a Sunday. I'm talking about people who go to mass every day, right? The percentage of the population that did that was the same as the percentage of the population that went to League of Ireland matches. Okay, so that's what a small subculture it was, and now it is emerging. It's now creating a foundation for itself, totally organically, without any help, really. With its hands tied behind its back in terms of facilities and all these things that are a huge obstacle to getting people to go to matches. But it really is the starting point. Um, and it's great, but it's just like the other way I always think about it. If you said to anybody, any sports fan in the country, how many figures in League of Ireland football would you recognise? Do you think the ordinary sports fan? And I said it to people who follow a lot more League of Ireland than I do, and the numbers are like, I always have it at about, I think, two or three people. I don't think there. I think there's probably Damien Duff, Stephen Kenny, maybe Stephen Bradley. How many players
Are
would people
in
How
terms
many
of
play?
household names, is it?
How many people would a general, your average sports fan, if somebody from the League of Ireland walked into a pub, how many people who would be recognised? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I see your point, and I don't disagree. I'd say, like, player wise, you probably Jack Bourne would probably be
Jack Byrne,
recognised, but
maybe. Yeah, Jack Byrne, maybe.
Maybe. I don't
sorry,
think
Danny.
I don't I generally I don't think you would. Like, I think you would need to be like fanatical almost in terms of how you follow it. I think even people who would like, right, so like Rovers Bows are playing the Aviva in 2 weeks' time or whatever it is. You'll get maybe 30, 40,000 people at that.
I
But
don't think you will.
well, even then, do you know what I mean? But I think that the point is, if that's meant to be the blockbuster, to Dion's point, like, you wouldn't. You could leave that stadium, you'd head for a point, you'd be walking down the road, you'd pass five, six, seven of those players, and you wouldn't even know.
Hmm.
You like
Yeah,
that. That's the
but
reality.
But
what's the
yeah,
point in? What's the point that's being made with that though?
the point is, don't bring logic into this, Mara. Um,
No, no,
uh,
no. I'm just saying, as in, like,
no,
yeah,
I
I
explain.
accept.
What my point is that it's show to me it illustrates how far there is to go, and also there's another linked point I think that's important is how are you going to do this, right? Because uh, like, it's great that Mason Melia is going to Spurs. It's even better that he's staying for another year because he will bring people. And to me,
Yeah.
now there aren't many players like him around, but he is what the League of Ireland, like I get like, and again, I don't follow it that closely, but when I see things happening, I think, right, here's some 27, 28-year-old fella coming in and probably getting very, very, very good money. And the the kind of revolving doors of transfers in League of Ireland clubs, and there's all these people coming in, and that's fine. But I think if you want to actually go to the next level, you actually build it around, you make it almost a kind of under 21 league. You know what I mean? You say,
Yeah,
right here, we're actually
absolutely.
investing in the academies that we're going to invest in, which again is a huge leap in the dark. If I don't want to, like, I'll get to them. Um, but like here are these bright young players, and like in a brutal kind of almost marketing way, like you don't know that these guys aren't going to make it. You know what I mean? Like they may or they
Yeah.
may not, but it's like in everywhere in football, people always love the idea of the young players who are coming through. Like, you know, they love that idea. If you marketed clubs around that, um, you would drive interest. You know what I mean? They wouldn't make it. Like they won't. But like it would be. And again, Melia's going to be like, you know, he's a high end example of it. But like this year, you're going to see an example of it with him. No, slightly. No, this isn't fair because people were excited by him beforehand. But the fact that he's been signed by Tottenham for 1 million is going to drive interest too. So it's slightly different. But if you could do that, you would create that sort of interest in that but you can only do that if you actually set it down as a kind of as a framework and as a structure for the league, because otherwise clubs are naturally going to go, well, we're not going to take a risk on a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds and we need to stay up or we need to win matches. We're going to bring in the seasoned journeyman and we're going to pay him the money that he he deserves for his career and what he's looking for and all that. But it's kind of I ultimately look at it and go, is this really is there where does that get you ultimately? You know what I mean? Like League of Ireland is never like the League of Ireland is never going to do a Premier League and start bringing in, transform itself by bringing in players from abroad on big wages that are big
Absolutely.
names. But apart from the guy at Bowes,
It's probably, I think the government needs to back it up here because, I mean, and I don't know if it's because of the legacy of John Delaney that they won't, but I mean, I think they should be committing to more investment. I think they have in the most recent program for government in regards to academies and stuff. But in terms of stadium and stuff, that the joint ventures between local councils and the clubs and all, I mean, build it and they'll come. We'll see. We see now with this year with Virgin Media getting behind showing a game every week, 36 games
yeah,
they're
yeah,
going to show a season. Like that's brilliant. And that's what should have happened a long time ago because what we had previously with RTE's coverage was they'll show 5 games for the first 5 weeks. They'll disappear for 10, 15 weeks. They might, depending on what mood Declan McBennett is in, they might show a European game. We saw last summer they didn't. And then at the end they'll show a title race, and there might not be a title race. So you have like a network isn't going to show a new series like the new series of The Sopranos and start with 6 episodes. Uh, Wait 10 weeks to show the second six. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
no,
you're
I
missing
completely agree with you.
storylines.
I completely
You're
agree with
missing
you.
storylines. You're
Yeah.
missing personalities. You're missing that
No, and look,
opportunity to
and
say, "Oh,
that is like the point I make about who isn't people not being known or seen. Like that's a very valid argument for it, or for why why it hasn't happened yet. Like I do take that point, and like let's see where we are with a year of as you say, like weekly coverage and what the audiences are for that. And now last year was such a kind of gripping title race. But again, gripping. Now you're right, like, but gripping because there was a personality involved that everybody knew as
Yeah.
well. You know what I mean? Like that,
yeah,
and like this is the thing. Like I lived in London for 20 years. I covered the Premier League for a long time. You know, it may not be right, it may not be correct, and it's not in many instances, but 10% of the time we were talking about the football. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Coutinho was the perfect people.
Yeah, we were talking like Suarez Evra, like that was it's a bad example in some ways, but that's, like I remember I was at Stamford Bridge the day of the Wayne Bridge, John Terry handshake. You know what I mean? And the world's media is there to see if one player is going to shake the hands of a player who's he's alleged, and apparently incorrectly, he's alleged to have had an affair with his former girlfriend, and this has got everyone.
Incorrectly, what?
Well, that's what they say now. They say it was anyway. Um, but it's like this has got everyone hooked, and you can look at it and you go, this is tabloid, this is disgusting, this is not, and it was like, and it was weird, but at the same time, it's the most extreme example of how plot lines drove interest, and like last year, League of Ireland had that with Duff, like they had, and the plot lines with him are so immense because they're like, and they kind of feed into things like, even what is he doing? Why is he so invested? Why does, like, even when he comes out this week and says, I turned down a big club, like, it generates that kind of interest, and it generates a plot line, and maybe the others will come from, it being on weekly, and it getting that kind of attention. The other thing I'd say to you, Marilyn, when you talk about, I agree with you, like the money, public money should be going to a far, far greater degree into Irish football. Um, Now, the one thing I would say is, who would you give it to? Like when you talk about academies, like, and this is the problem with Irish football, and this is, there is just a track record of getting it wrong, constantly getting it wrong. Okay, most of the time, and like all the time, really, getting it wrong from a position of kind of, you know, virtual poverty, like having no money to spend on anything, and really, but like that has fed a kind of, you know, quite a kind of territorial mentality in Irish football too, that nobody wants to see anybody get too far ahead because they never know when the next bit of money is going to come to them. You know what I mean? But like, who would you say? Like, because we talk about these academies, we talk about Brexit and players having to stay here, and what a great opportunity that is. It's only an opportunity if you do the right things with that money, if you get it. And we see how much you need to spend to actually run an academy well. And I've been out to Rovers Academy, and it's brilliant. Like, it is really brilliant. And I'm sure there are other clubs who want to do great things and are doing good things. But again, it's like, well, you know, it's it's just that concern of where does it go, and what do you do with it, and what do you want from it? Like, and like there's so many areas. And again, as I said, like, my interest at this stage is kind of, getting can we find pitches for kids to play on? Like,
On a
uh,
Saturday.
on a Saturday and a Sunday, like, and you're rained off, and we're in the time of year. Like, I know the council in Dunleary 2 weeks ago with Storm Mayo, and cancelled all the matches on a Saturday, even on the Thursday afternoon. And we were out playing in Fairhouse, and there was a coach who was meant to be playing in a match. He was saying, Jesus, the weather must be terrible. He was playing at Leicester Celtic, which was about 5 minutes away. He said, Jesus, we were playing in sunshine, and all the pitches, 5 minutes away were closed because they were in different council. And there was nothing wrong with any pitches, but they just shut them all on the Thursday. And they do that. That happens, now it happens a lot of time for good reason, but it shows like that lack of interest, that real belief in how important it is to have kids playing football, have kids playing all sports. And like, if I was getting the money, that's what I'd be saying. Do get that right. Get people out playing, and then let's see about the academy. Now, but I wouldn't be giving money to 50, to 10, to even 10 League of Ireland clubs and saying, here, you set up a spanking academy. You've got to be selective about it, and you got to get the right people doing it. And again, that's the key thing.
Hopefully, we'll see better investment, because I think it's in the program for government, um, to give the money. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, Dion, thanks so much for your time. We're taking enough of your time this evening. Gentlemen, we'll be looking out for Free State Live. I think I've annoyed you quite a few times over the past year to do it. So
You
looking
only
forward to
annoyed me
that.
about, you mainly annoyed me about the Christy Moore Mero. That was the main one. Once
Yeah,
that
because
came out,
it was 5 months after you recorded it. Like,
I'm sitting in a restaurant one night and there you are fucking coming up to me. But have a curry. And you're like, when's Christy
what a
coming out?
restaurant it is, by
I
the
know
way.
it is. It is a great, good one, isn't it?
Yeah, that Christie one was brilliant. Did you enjoy that episode?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. I love that. That's by far my favorite.
yeah.
He's a great man.
And the Joe got emotional, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He did. No, it was hard not to. It was an emotional evening. It was just, I would like even just be sitting there, because Christy had said to me he wouldn't bring his guitar, and then, and I was like, that's fine, whatever you want to do. We're just so happy that you're doing it. And then, I was outside the
Talking to it.
studio and he pulled up and he had his guitar in the back seat and he brought it in and just to sit and listen to him play and sing and like he's amazing. Like you see him live all the time. I've seen him live a lot and I haven't actually been to see him in a while and I need to go and see him again. And it's amazing how powerful and how strong his voice is and his new album is amazing. It's
Brilliant.
absolutely
Brilliant.
brilliant.
And I'd be the first to say about his studio albums that yeah, I do love them, but I prefer to hear him sing the songs live. But
Yeah.
it's funny you say about people getting emotional because our mutual friend, me, Paul Howard, myself and Paul went to see him last Christmas, and Paul got very emotional at it. And I said, "Are you crying?" And he said, "Yeah." And he wasn't the only one in the room that was
Right. I
fairly
know.
emotional. And I think I don't know whether people are getting like that because he's getting older. I don't know, but people seem
Mm.
to be getting quite emotional at his gigs lately. But
Yeah.
yeah, great interview you did with him.
No, it was very good. No, but he's amazing live. Like it is, it's not even it's a cliche even to say it, like, but he is he is like it is something profound to see him live. And it is amazing. It's also incredible how young his audience is now. Like it's just like there's young people coming to it,
Crazy.
you know.
I went to see him before you go. I went to see him in the Pavilion Theatre about 3 years ago,
Was that the
and there
first
was a
gig back
man.
after COVID?
He did a first gig back after COVID, and there was only like 20% allowed in
Yeah,
the
yeah. It
Pavilion.
was the first
But
full
then he
back.
did
Yeah, yeah.
one,
Yeah,
the
I was at
first
one.
full one back.
Yeah.
He did in the Pavilion, and there was a man in the audience that he called out was 80. And then there
Right.
was a little girl sitting beside me up the front, and she was 8 or 9, and she wanted a set list, and she got a song request.
Mm,
And I was just leaving, going, there's a person there, 9 years of age, and a man 80 years of age at the one concert.
I know, I know, I
It's
know.
a pity
Mental.
never been to Neil Diamond, lads. It happens all the time.
You can have them.
All right, lads. Look, thanks for having me.
Uh,
Dion, thanks
Thanks
so much
for
for your
coming on,
time.
Dion.
Cheers.
Talk to you
Bye-bye.
soon. Thank
See
you.
you, lads. See you.
A brilliant chat with Dion there. Really appreciate his candor and input and his patience with Mero for fanboying over his fellow presenter in Joe Brolly.
Was
Good
I
man.
fun,
You were, yeah, Jesus. And Dion, can you tell me this about Joe? And Dion, isn't it great when Joe does this? And Dion, do you know Joe?
Stop. No, I wasn't.
You were, you no, you were,
Yeah.
you were. It was endearing though. It wasn't. It was endearing.
I was only saying that he doesn't give a ball. I was basically saying he doesn't give a shy. I do love the rants he goes on, and
Yeah.
you're kind of anytime you're listening to one of Broly's rants, you're kind of going, "What is Dion doing here?"
And
Like,
will you be sending Joe a Valentine's card then, or what's your plan?
maybe we'll see.
Yeah, good man. Do. The card industry needs the money, Graham.
Can't believe Dion told the world that I called him out in a restaurant.
Did you call him out in a restaurant?
Well, you were there.
I know, but I don't remember you calling him out. That's why I was a bit like I remember you.
When me, you, and Gary and Paul went to Dada in Glasshill, Dion was there, and they had announced that they interviewed Christy Moore. And 2 months later, they still hadn't released it. And when we were down there, I said, Dion, where is the Christy Moore podcast? And he said,
Ah,
yeah, we're waiting. But they eventually released it, I think 6 months later.
yeah. I must have gone. I must have gone to the ladies' room when
Oh,
that incident.
possibly.
Yeah, yeah.
Stunning food we had that night.
Absolutely beautiful. If you haven't been, lads, we highly recommend Data in Glassdoor. Stunning food, stunning.
Stunning.
The Afghan chicken is
Oh,
it's a dish I adore. So
oh, I need to go back down there actually.
we do. We should organise a date. Right. Well, look, I don't want to start talking about food because I haven't had me dinner.
Is that
It's
where you're etching to go? What's for dinner?
I don't know. I don't know what's for dinner because Cube's cooked, not me. So, and I
Oh,
feel
the
bad because
roast.
she was in work today in Dublin, and then she comes home and I don't have a dinner made, and she's 14 months pregnant, and I'm saying cook a dinner there and go on podcasting.
She'll murder you if she hears you say she's 14 months pregnant.
Well, I mean, she's far along now. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know what the
How is the sound being now with her intro outro? Has it been better?
much better. Yeah, see, I don't know.
I wonder if it's that tick the box thing you told me to do.
Maybe the settings that we did in between the talk and this talk that we
Yeah,
the production meetings that we have from time to
yeah.
time.
The setting you told me to change the setting on the setting, so I changed the setting.
I did, and that setting seems to have helped the settings overall. So here we are now.
Perfect. Until
Excellent.
next time.
No, hang on very quickly. You had a
Oh,
delicious looking piece of chocolate there that I want the viewers to know about. And then if you can tell me where you got it, please, and thanks.
I was getting petrol today in Circle K Bray, and I looked to my right when I got into the shop, and there was three different variations of Kit Kat, and
Unbelievable.
there was a salted caramel,
Right?
hazelnut, and I think the third one was double chocolate. I could be wrong on that.
Did they
And
wait now? Have they just didn't they have them for years and then they stopped doing them? Have they brought them back?
they had them in a chunky, a Kit Kat chunky variation.
Yeah.
Now it's just like a Kit Kat.
The four finger variety.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not. It's not really like the fingers are sideways.
Right.
They're sideways, if you can imagine. Do you know what? I have to laugh. It
There's
says
a lot of
three.
jokes here I could be making, but I'm going to resist.
There's a disclaimer on the back, Danny, that says know your serving. 3 fingers equals 1 serving. Until next time, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Too sweet.